Hello, Manchester United have a worldwide fan base. Our own listeners and presenters on the channel come from different corners of the world. As you can see, Kyle comes from America, our favourite host up there on the right hand side. Do you get frustrated that you can't watch Manchester United or Premier League football or any certain live sports events because they're not televised or available in your country? Well, friends, listeners, viewers, we have a solution. Did you know that NordVPN enables you to switch your virtual location to a country that is showing the game so you don't miss out? You can watch the action live and then you can catch up with us to discuss it afterwards. If you're concerned about cybercrime and people stealing your private data, NordVPN has you covered. It's a one-stop shop for cybersecurity. It's easy to use. You don't have to be a tech genius to use it. With your NordVPN account, you can protect up to 6 devices. That's no hackers, no malicious sites or pop-ups to worry about. That's for the price of one coffee a month. You can have complete peace of mind knowing your devices and data is protected. A small price to pay for premium cybersecurity and access to not only sport but entertaining content from all over the world. Get your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com /devils10 to get a huge discount off your Node VPN plan and 4 months for free. It's completely risk free with Node's 30-day money back guarantee. That's NordVPN /devils10, and the link is in the description. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined on this Sunday evening or afternoon, as we are in Kyle's land, to talk over the weekend's event at Manchester United. I'm joined by Kyle Diller and Harry Toor. If you're watching back on if you're watching live, in fact, on YouTube, feel free to get your questions and comments in also on Facebook. If you're watching the replay, do feel free to say hello and comment. We do reply to all of those comments. If you're listening back on the audio podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe on the platform you are listening on. Been a while, guys. Good to have you on this Sunday.
Yeah.
Come to you first, Harry. How are you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, good. It's I guess the benefits of being in the Europa League, right? So we're always playing on a blooming Sunday, so I guess that's why I couldn't go on to it. But yeah, no, it's great to be back. I haven't done one of these in a little while, so been all good. Been slightly chirpier. The performances have been better with United. Always makes for a better weekend. So all good.
Yeah. Kyle, how about you, mate? You all right?
Good. Yeah, it's been a while. It's good to talk with everyone. The schedule's been a little weird with everything going on, but yeah, it's good to finally get back on and talk about United for a little bit.
Especially considering we've had a decent run of results. Although,
Yeah.
I guess it's like it's definitely over the last week it's 2 draws and a win, and I'm sitting here thinking, you know what, it's glass half full. It's not actually, one of those draws was a home draw with Newcastle, so very interesting run of results. Yesterday we drew 1-1 at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, a ground where I think they said it was the most drawn game in Premier League history. Well, it helps when 2 of those teams have been in from the off, right? So it's one of the most played games. So it's obviously stands a good chance of being the most drawn. But I felt honestly, I felt like we picked up where we left off against Spurs. Thought it was a controlled first half performance, the most assured we've been in a game like that for years. I felt away from home, the authority with which we played. I had the same concern as I did it against Spurs around about half time, because against Spurs we played so well in the first half. I'm thinking it's difficult to match that level of intensity in the second and that level of control. Well, I was proved wrong on Wednesday for sure, because they came out and they played magnificently in the second. I'm not saying that was right yesterday, but I did feel like we took some of the sting out of our own momentum for a little bit with the changes that we made. Obviously, Eriksen, his stamina and his endurance to last a full game is one thing to sort of discuss. Rashford obviously has been leading the line, and there's no one in there. I mean, Ronaldo's escapades will come to in a little while, but Rashford's being tasked with that responsibility. The only front man that we've got to lead that. So there's been a lot of pressure on him, but he sort of felt as soon as he went off, there wasn't an outlet yesterday. So it was a bit difficult. So I felt like we did sort of shoot ourselves in the foot with the way that we were playing the game and the timing with which he made the changes. And then you say that, and then we concede a penalty, and then we bombard and score the equaliser like good old Manchester United. It was such a weird one, the changes. Obviously, McTominay comes on. You can say, oh, he shouldn't have done what he did. You could also say that you see those every week. But as soon as he's locked his hands around him, as soon as that guy's going to the ground, you know he's going to be getting that penalty. But then Casemiro tops off a great performance and a great run of form, really, with this fantastic equaliser, great header. And United get a draw they definitely deserve. And I guess we could talk about, if they deserve more. Harry, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of points you made were pretty spot on. I think the way we started was fantastic, and I think Ten Hag's kind of way of the which he wants to play and his system is finally taking effect. So, pressing from the front, always kind of being in the game and moving forward, being attacking. Like, for example, Luke Shaw down the left. I haven't seen one of our fullbacks get so far forward in a game and really create chances. So I think the kind of puzzle, the Ten Hag puzzle, is kind of coming to effect, and the way he wants to do things, and slightly quicker than I think even I anticipated, especially after the results like Brighton and Brentford, where we kind of looked at a bit of a loss. But it seems like the way he wants to play, and the so-called Ten Hag ball is actually taking shape, which is fantastic. We've just been, the last two games haven't seen United like that, so organised in such a long time. That's how top teams like City and Liverpool last year, that's how they play football. When they don't have the ball, you press as a team and you press hard to get it back. And that's what we did for the whole 90 against Tottenham. And yesterday, Chelsea were there for the taking. They genuinely were. And if we had a little bit more experience there, I think, those couple of chances we had would have been taken. But yeah, we're clearly lacking an out-and-out striker. And Rashford, I don't think is going to fit that bill. We need just a complete goal scorer, which it's hard to come by, right? I mean, Haaland is one of the very few, and there's not many others like him. So overall, really, really happy with the performance, really happy with the way the team are playing. But one thing that really, really did top it off for me was that reaction from the goal. Not only from the players, but how they all literally bundled in with the fans. I mean, Martinez, I thought he was going to do a little one of those waves, when the crowd carry him over. It's that kind of passion and that connection with the fans, which I think we haven't had in so long. But this group of players, seem to have it, and I think that's the kind of mentality that our players need to get those last minute goals, to really push themselves, to get the Stretford end rocking when we need a last minute goal as well. So massive pluses from yesterday.
Kyle, it's an interesting one. I mean, Harry's there talking about the way that United have sort of elevated themselves to compete with the bigger teams and how their level looks up on, well, certainly on last season, but over the last few years in general. It's even more than that, isn't it? Because, I mean, the things that we've seen over the last week are so reminiscent of a proper Manchester United side. Harry was talking about the togetherness with the support. And I think there's one thing that I've really been impressed with Ten Hag is that, and this is one thing we've definitely criticised this squad over the last year for, is their response to either losing a goal or losing a game. The responses have been so poor. Their heads have been down, and we've seen them absolutely collapse. And the reactions this season, I mean, you're going to get setbacks, especially when you've got a hodgepodge squad like we have. You are going to get setbacks. So what we're all looking at as supporters of a club with a new manager in is how do we respond to adversity? And I'm not saying every single time, but 9 out of 10 times where he's been able to control or have some kind of influence in the control of the response, it's 9 times out of 10 being spot on. I mean, it wasn't just like, obviously Newcastle, everyone was complaining about the performance. We were so flat. And then the response is the reaction. We come out and we absolutely batter Spurs in that first half. And that was something that you saw under Ferguson so many times, that if there was some kind of criticism in there, the players would seem to take it personally. And traditionally over recent years, the players have felt sorry for themselves, but not this United side or this collective with the inspiration of the additions. It seems to have had this really strong reaction. And yesterday was another one, like to go 1 goal down. All right, I happen to think it was a definite penalty on McTominay. I think, all right, you do see that kind of thing, but and they do. A lot of teams do get away with it. But if you take that chance, you deserve to get a penalty given against you. But the reaction from the fact that we had like 5 minutes left, and to react and score a goal like that, and the patience with which we showed, it wasn't like we were panicking or anything. It was like, all right, controlled. Exactly the same style thing. I'm not comparing it to Ferguson at all, but it was reminiscent of something that you would see from the old Fergie teams. How pleased have you been? How familiar have you found this United side since the Newcastle draw last week?
Yeah, a lot more familiar, and I would even go back past the Newcastle draw because, I mean, we were talking about this at the beginning. We haven't. I don't think we've done a podcast in over a month at this point. And I think the United team we last were talking about is very different than the team that we are watching now. And I think that's really a credit to Ten Hag. I think when he came in, there was 3 things I really wanted to look for, aside from the results, and that was recruitment, which I think he did a good job on. I know we can go back to the De Jong saga, but players that he really wanted, like Martinez, I think his mentality is absolutely perfect for what this team needs. I think Anthony is really good at that too. Just wish he would learn how to use his right foot. But Casemiro, I don't think that was his first choice, but he's been a revelation since he started being, once he got into the side regularly. Beyond the recruitment, though, was really the mentality and the tactics. And that's where you're starting to see the old United again, I think. I think last year their heads dropped just so much. Anytime they went down a goal, there was just no fight in them. Even going into matches, even when the game kicks off and it's 0-0, they still just didn't really have that confidence about them. I think there's still a few players in the squad that are still a little lacking for confidence. We can get into the substitutions yesterday. I think Sancho, that he needs a goal more than anyone that I can remember in a long time. He just needs something to get his confidence back. I think that was kind of a forced sub that kind of started to shift the game. Unfortunately, I think Bruno was better when he was center, but and then tactically, I mean, you've seen it in the Spurs game and now the Chelsea game. It's just, this is how you want United to look. And if they did have an out and out, goal scorer, I think, they're winning those games significantly. I think yesterday we'd be up 2-3 goals at the end of the first half if there's just someone who could finish there. Trying, especially in the first year of a rebuild like this with Ten Hag, trying to look at like what is the culture, what are the tactics, and I think for the first time we're really starting to see this is tactically what United looks like, and it does remind you a little bit of the United of the old because it's proactive, they're attacking, they're pushing, and when there is a setback, they get right back to it. Exactly like you said, the Newcastle game. I mean, they came out and the Tottenham performance was one of the best performances I can remember in a long time. And it could have been a lot better if they could just finish some of those chances. But I think, and then the Chelsea game yesterday was just such, it went from being disappointed that we weren't going to, I thought we deserved all 3 points the way we played in the first half. Yeah. And then we kind of took our foot off the gas a little bit in the second. And then when they got the penalty, I was like, we deserve something out of this. I really thought we deserved all 3 points based on how we started the game and really kind of maintained it up until the subs in the second half. And then you just want to get something out of it. And they got something out of it, which is not something that would have happened last season. I'm not even sure it would have happened 2 months ago. It was just awesome to see. And exactly like you said, it was controlled. They weren't just, trying to shoot from 20 yards and get a goal. They worked through it. They kept the ball, they kept possession, and then they found an opportunity. And I still can't believe that ball went in. That was an incredible header by Casemiro. It was almost an incredible save by Kepa, but it just thank God for a few millimeters there, because I think I scared my poor dog with the roar that I had after that goal. So I just looking at multiple different aspects of Ten Hag. I think we're going to get into another one of them here shortly. Unfortunately, is I think he's done almost everything right the last month or two, and it's really started to show in the way the team plays and the way that the team acts and the connection it has with the supporters in general. I think everyone's, with an exception, fighting for each other in the team at this point.
Yeah, a few millimeters can make all the difference.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's all we needed.
Hella says, in hindsight, I'm happy Young didn't happen. Casemiro kind of came out of the blue, but absolutely delighted with him. Leach has been great, as we knew he would, as I knew he would be. Impressed with Shaw's form as well. Yeah, I mean, that is bringing me on to the next point, Kyle. I do want to talk about, we can talk about the defense, because obviously the defense has been magnificent, and it's such a shame that the injury again with Varane, it's so frustrating to see that happen. And you hope that, Lindelof, when he's come in recently, he hasn't let anybody down. So you hope that, if he's going to be the natural partner for Martinez, that it's not going to be too destabilizing before the World Cup. But I do want to talk about the midfield, because I tweeted yesterday and got a little bit of division for it. A lot of people understood where I was coming from. A lot of people say, no, you can't say that, it's sacrilege. And I understand both sides. I said watching Casemiro and Eriksen kind of reminded me of 2001 Roy Keane and 2007 Paul Scholes together. And I know we're talking about two of the greatest players of United's history, and I'm not saying that these players are, but you've got to remember as well, Casemiro is a world-class midfielder who's won numerous Champions Leagues. You can't just say that he doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the conversation. And Eriksen is one of the best creative midfielders in Premier League history. You can't say that he doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath. And I'm not saying, obviously, Keane and Scholes are better, but I'm not saying Casemiro and Eriksen can't outprove me on that one either, because they're still very early into the United careers. But you look at what they bring to the midfield, Kyle, and the stability, the tenacity, Casemiro's ability to, his rapid. I was talking about this on the podcast with Lee and Phil on Friday night. Casemiro's range of tackling is so reminiscent of Keane's, the way that he can wrap his legs around and just come away with the ball, the way that he goes into tackles, even like when he got the yellow card against Spurs, he still went into them with the authority and still won the ball. And Eriksen, perhaps not as physically resolute as Scholes, but certainly not markedly less clever on the ball. He's so good on the ball. He's so good at finding spaces. Possibly what you're lacking physicality from Eriksen, you make up in agility. The way that he moves around is probably a little bit more graceful than what Scholes was. And in tandem together, neither of them might have been United's first choices, but it's the best, regardless of whether you say, they are Scholes and Keane or whatever. It's definitely the best midfielder we've had since, let's say, Scholes and Carrick were in there, isn't it? For 10 years, it looks completely transformed.
I'd say pretty easily. I'm trying to think of some of the nightmare midfield pairings we've had over the last 5-6 years even, and it's hard to think about. And it's weird too, because I really thought Eriksen was going to come in and with the heart condition, I thought, maybe he's going to be there to help carry the load with Bruno. So because Bruno plays essentially every match, maybe he's going to kind of, they'll rotate a little bit. I never expected him to be to play the deep line role. That's not what I'm used to him. It's not what I really remembered from his Spurs days. And he's just dropped back and he's perfect. Like it's really a testament to his overall ability and technique, and he's just filled that role to me almost flawlessly. You worry about him defensively, but you haven't really needed to, because Casemiro is so good at reading the game and intercepting the ball, making the tackle. And the thing that I've also been impressed with him by is you never thought of him as the creative player in that Madrid midfield. I mean, how could you, considering he's playing with Modric and but his passing is very good. Like he's he is able to kind of dictate the game a little bit from his position, and it's so refreshing to have that kind of two dynamic midfielders that read the game well, that are able to kind of build the attack, be that link between the defense and the attack. I think they've been exceptional. I mean, I honestly can't think of any midfielder in the last 10 years that has been close to what we've seen from them in these first few months of the season.
Yeah, Harry. I mean, we've spent this sort of post-Ferguson era. Can we unlock Pogba? What can Matic do? Who's Herrera's best partner? And these two have just come in, and not even those kind of topics, that kind of agenda is just nobody's even mentioning that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely testament to how good they are as footballers, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, out of those players you mentioned, Herrera, I thought was, he's one which I think should and could have stayed a little bit longer than he did. But yeah, 100%. I mean, that's a part of the park which we've struggled with for a very, very long time. And I personally don't think we've ever replaced Roy Keane from the standpoint of having a box-to-box midfielder, breaking up play, being aggressive. And yeah, Casemiro is the first one that's showing signs of that kind of player that we needed. And Eriksen, on the other hand, like I've just been so impressed with, his general vision, his creativity, and what we haven't had in such a long time. In that, whenever we've had the ball, we always would go sideways. We wouldn't have that player that would feel, confident enough to put through, creative pass and basically when we've just got the ball back in possession, let's look at how we can go forward. Let's look at how we can cut the lines, get a winger in, or look at for that kind of first kind of initial pass to get the move going. And I guess because Eriksen, doesn't have anything to prove, I don't think he feels any pressure. He's the one that's been doing it for us. Maybe not, the last kind of deadly pass, but like, for example, I still remember against Liverpool, he played this cute little ball into Malacia, who then put it into Sancho for Sancho's goal. And I mean, we just didn't have anyone for the last 3 to 4 years that had that kind of vision, which is having a huge, huge impact. So, I mean, again, we were talking about recruitment and how well kind of Martinez has fit in and had this relationship with Varane. And I hope it's the same for Casemiro. We needed a central defensive midfield player. We needed someone to help with vision as well and moving forward. And so we've got this pairing in Casemiro and Eriksen. I know they're very, very big billing to live up to with Roy Keane and Paul Scholes, but yeah, they could be living up to that expectation.
Yeah, Hella says we're bossing it in our pressing play now, and some teams are not expecting that from us. Good for Varane. How good has he been? Spurs could have used a creative midfielder like Eriksen right about now. They've been woeful, which pleases me immensely. It's another bad result for them today. And Newcastle getting a win on the road, which shows you how difficult it is to play against them at home. Apparently,
they're good. They're and I mean they're obviously going to get better. We know the money situation, but they've turned it around very quickly.
And if you think about it, over the last week, we've played 3 teams which are above us in the league, and we've got 5 points. And we're only 3 points now off Tottenham, who are third. So it's not been the worst of weeks,
Yeah. I completely agree with everything you guys said about Casemiro. And the more I see him play, especially because I kind of enjoy it sometimes when you see a player who's, you can see, if you're looking at it rationally and reasonably, you can see a player's being slowly integrated into the team. He's been slowly integrated to the pace of the league. You could see that Ten Hag was deliberately doing that, and everyone's going, "Oh, it's another Van der Beek. He's never. Why did he buy him if he's not going to play him?" And then he comes in, and it reminds me again to make the Keane comparison. But I'm going to go back to when Keane was right at the end, when so like that last year when he'd had the problems, but whenever he played, he was still probably the man of the match, unless someone was completely outstanding and bossed him. He said, like, like if Rooney comes on and he scores like a hat trick or something, they're having these star games. Then Keane was usually the man of the match. It was like an 8 out of 10 every single week, and this was like latter day Keane. And Casemiro reminds me of that. You put him in, and I know if you take him out immediately, you'd be like, oh my God, don't we miss that player? Because he's the kind of player who's doing. I don't want to be mean to McTominay and Fred because they both serve the purpose at certain points this season. But he looks like what you wanted McTominay and Fred to be in a single player. He does all that kind of thing, and he's so good. And it's fantastic yesterday again. So we've got to talk about the forward line. I mean, I know you guys might want to give your opinions on Ronaldo as well, but I want to talk about the forward line in general.
Without talking about Ronaldo, where I think that's been talked to death. Let's talk about the players that are playing for the club.
Yeah, we'll talk about the forward line in general. Harry mentioned it earlier on that that's one area that we need a massive upgrade, and we do. One thing I would want to say on that is that, we're upgraded in stages, right? So we upgraded the defense. That's been, I'm not saying fixed, but there's been a massive upgrade in that area. Even Luke Shaw coming out, Luke Shaw has obviously been a revelation, as we know that he can be when he's got competition. I wasn't the biggest fan of him coming out and saying, isn't it great what happens when you've got a left-footed centre-back by the side of you? Because I think a bit unnecessary, but also as unnecessary as Harry Maguire tweeting, "Come on, lads!" Like after Ronaldo's thing, it's like we don't need these politics right now. Anyway, but the forward line. Let's get to the forward line because we talked about the midfield, we talked about the defense. There's obvious upgrades in those areas. We can see how significantly that has helped United. So when you look at maybe the left wing and you see Sancho struggling, when you look at possibly the 1 or 2 occasions where Dalot's had a bad game, like against City, and you think, oh, he's still suspect defensively, no matter how much he's improved. And then you look at the forward line and you think, if Rashford's not breaking through on one-on-ones, if he's got the defence in front of him and the goalkeeper in front of him, his finishing style is nowhere near as prolific, let's say, it does bring you onto that issue with the forward line. And you have 3 forwards who, for one reason or another, they bring something, but not quite the complete package. And with Martial, does he do it enough in the big games, or is he reliable enough to not cry off, if that's what we're going to say, or or even just playing not injury prone enough? And then you've got that aspect with Rashford with the clinical finishing, and then you've obviously got the issue with Ronaldo, whether or not he plays, whether or not he wants to play, and how good he is and how capable he is of matching Ten Hag's system when he does. I mean, I will say, and we're not really going to, like, Kyle, I'm going to bow to your wish on this one, and we're not going to go over the Ronaldo thing, but in terms of his capabilities, I will say I feel that when he's played, I think he's tried to play the Ten Hag way. I don't think he's just said, I'm just going to play it my way. He's tried to press. You've just seen that the legs are not quite there. When he came on against Everton, he was quite good against Everton in a different way to what Martial was. And we know that Martial is probably more of a fit for that kind of forward player than either a Rashford or or Ronaldo.
Yeah, I mean, without getting into like the politics of Ronaldo right now, just getting into the style of play, I do think that he's trying to play the way that Ten Hag wants to play when he's on the pitch. I do think that physically, some of the elements required for that style has kind of passed him by. I mean, age comes for us all. He's not that much older than me at this point. But it's been hard to watch because you can tell that he's trying and it's just not happening for him. And it makes me sad because, like, I mean, some of my favorite memories of watching United were that stretch from 06 to 09 when he was at his peak, really. But it's just hard. And I don't think it's all his fault either. The one thing that drives me insane is whoever is on the pitch with him when he does play tries to play through him. Everything runs through. It's so one-dimensional. Everything's trying to run through Ronaldo. It's like players will pass up an opportunity to try to feed the ball to Ronaldo. And I'd rather like they play so much more like selflessly when he's not on the pitch. They kind of play together. There's a rhythm in what they're doing. That, you know, there's synergy. With Ronaldo, it's very one dimensional. Like they're going to try to get the ball to Ronaldo, and I don't think that's necessarily all him to say. You know, to say.
Yeah.
I think he does want the ball. I think he demands it, and you obviously see the outcry when he doesn't get it. But I think it changes the mentality of the players around him too, and that's where I think they really start to struggle. I wish there was a way for him to play without them doing that, but clearly it's not working. You know, whatever it is that they feel like they have to try to kind of play through him and get him involved.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I wonder when you see Ronaldo play. Normally they've played Sancho wide and Anthony wide, and I think maybe you'd be better off playing Rashford wide if you have to play Ronaldo through the middle. There's no other place to play Ronaldo. Then at least put Rashford wide of him, because I think, yeah, all right, Rashford's a little bit more greedy, but at least he's hungry for goals, and Sancho doesn't play in that same kind of way. And if he's not playing in that kind of way, then there's no freedom for Ronaldo, really, because you know that he's the target. Whereas, you know, if you've got Anthony and you've got Rashford, then more so Rashford, that you've got someone who's trying to score goals. You mentioned this earlier, Harry. You were talking about the forward players, the obvious area now that United need to improve. And yeah, we do have these issues with the forward players. By the way, I mean, if you're going to talk about problems, it's not necessarily the worst problem to have if you can get one or two of these players clicking. Because I remember, certainly there's no ruling out that Ronaldo, regardless of how far gone it seems, there's no 100% ruling out that Ronaldo can turn it on and have a really good run of form. That could definitely happen. Martial could click into gear, and that could definitely happen. We've seen from Rashford and Martial in the past that they can inspire themselves when they're in competition to play good form, and especially when they're on the pitch together, they can look magnificent together. So it's not necessarily the worst problem to have. The only issue is that you look at the ceilings of each of those players and you wonder, are we better off trying something new? Because we've had 4 or 5 years of at least 2 of those players, and we know that Ronaldo, we're not going to get another 4 or 5. So it's a very difficult situation, not the worst thing to try. But you look at the fact that you've seen improvement in this system through players who aren't necessarily massively expensive. You know, yeah, Anthony definitely is, but Eriksen came on a free. Martinez, not the most expensive defender. Malacia, certainly not. And what you've seen in those areas is this profound improvement. So as long as you get a player who's fairly quick in that front line and fairly decisive with his finishing, I'm not saying that this is going to be a player who's like a Haaland, but it could have a profound impact on the versatility and danger of that front line, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, if you think about it and break down our forward line, we actually have quite a few players in there as it is. So we've obviously got Anthony, Ronaldo, Rashford, Sancho, and Martial. That's 5 players. If they can all be fit at the same time and all be singing off the same hymn sheet, you know, and they're giving each other competition, and, you know, that in itself could mean that we don't need to get another striker in. I mean, I know Carl mentioned about Anthony and his right foot. Yeah, he obviously needs to work on that. But that is one position that we've struggled with. I mean, Sancho was brought in to play on the right. We finally got someone with a left foot, very good left foot. I mean, his goal against City was amazing. That can play on the right. So that seems to be sorted for now. And then for the rest, like Rashford, again, he is very much a confidence player, and he scored, you know, goals in big games this year. So you would hope that confidence kind of goes forward. But I think you mentioned it in that his finishing is a little bit one-dimensional. He always goes for that little knuckleball kind of strong kind of hit in his finishing. And Martial, who knows? He might come back as a brand new player under a new manager that has full confidence and faith in him, because I think from previous years he has been that kind of player. If you give him that confidence at running the team, he does, you know, produce results. It just depends which Martial turns up. And then Sancho, I mean, I was reading a stat today when he was at Dortmund. I think his last 2 years, he had scored between like 10 to 15 goals, if not more, and got 20 odd assists. Again, with Haaland, but still, I mean, those are stats which are strong stats, right? There's obviously something in there which needs to be unlocked to get him up to his full potential. So you're right that we have players there. We have 5 players there for 3 positions. So that in itself, they should be egging each other on. And once, let's hope, Ronaldo does come round, he should be the one which is the experienced head, right? Which is bringing these players through and improving them. And again, I completely agree with Carl's point is when he is on the pitch, everyone feels that, it has to go through Ronaldo. And I just think that can't change because Ten Hag's not going to say, don't pass to Ronaldo. When Ronaldo's on the pitch, he's not going to say, don't pass to me, because when they don't, he's going to get frustrated. And that in itself just kind of changes the game, in the kind of wrong direction for us, as in we tend to go backwards. Like Bruno doesn't play the way he should do when Ronaldo's sometimes there. But anyway, going back to my point, it's, we have the players there. They should be egging each other on. And yeah, we should really be improving amongst ourselves with what we have.
A few comments here, some of the same names coming in. Hella says, I'd always stick Rashi on the left, not as a false 9. Martial, sadly, is too injury prone. It's a bonus when he can play. I had to smile when you said, Harry, maybe under a new manager he can do well.
I laughed at that too. I was like, how many times have we said that now?
Ella says, I'm hoping for Gakpo. Ronaldo will be gone soon. And also, Sancho never really kicked off until around November at Dortmund. He's got goals in him. I'll come to Dave's comment first on this. It's evening, gents. We need to spend next summer's budget in January on Cody Gakpo. It's a challenge for this league. We are short, just a prolific striker. He's our man. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, that's a good point. By the way, Davo's going to be over in England over the coming days, so he's going to be on next week's podcast with Paul Parker. I'm excited to see him and give him a big bear man hug. Miss him, good old Davo. He says, in regards to Ronaldo, we need to terminate his contract. Well, a bit harsh here. ASAP. No, not harsh, actually. Now I'm reading it. We need to terminate his contract ASAP. Big Ronnie fan, but this team is not built for Ronaldo. He could ruin his legacy with his antics. Let's talk about this quick. Let me just one more comment before I get to Ronaldo. Even though I know Kyle didn't want to talk about him, but I've got a different way.
At least there's an opportunity to talk about the new forwards that we can bring in to eventually replace him. So,
KF4 says, I know it won't happen, but Kane's contract is up in 2024. At this rate, his only option in England is United or Spurs. Fancy a cheeky 20 million bid in the summer. I fancy it, but you can imagine.
I can tell you one person who doesn't.
Can you imagine going back to Daniel Levy with 20?
I was like, there's one person who would not like that.
Ronaldo. Look, so there seems to be. I don't want to talk about what happened. I think we're all on the same wavelength of it's probably. I thought at some point between the Spurs game and the weekend that we might see a repeat of the Roy Keane situation where they just announced abruptly that his contract's been terminated and he's moved on. It hasn't happened. He's still at the club. Seems to be a little bit of backtracking now, as you sort of see with Ronaldo after a couple of these things since the summer. There's a little bit of frustration in the heat of the moment and then a sort of like settling down and realizing his current status and his current options. And dare I say it, maybe a nervous conversation with George Mendes about what the likelihood of that next step represents, and how far down he's likely to have to look. It serves him better to be at United at this moment than it serves United to have him. And because, the steep drop that he faces is not going to be pleasant for him. The only alternative I can see is Chelsea coming in because of the sort of contretemps that was there between the manager Tuchel before he was sacked, and that seemed to center a lot on wanting to bring Ronaldo in the in the summer. So perhaps that could rear its head again if Graham Potter sort of says, I'm not going to turn down the chance to work with someone like Ronaldo. You've got that potential avenue for a transfer, but other than that, MLS.
I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, the MLS is always looking for big names this side of the pond. So,
but what do you make of that then, Calvis? I mean, like over this last 24 hours, it does seem to be yet again, for at least the second time this season, that there's been some kind of revision internally in the Ronaldo camp, and they've sort of gone, oh, do you know what? Perhaps it's best not to rock the boat. So he's putting on his Instagram, "Come on United," and there's a lot of
I saw that yesterday. It made me chuckle. No, I mean, to me, Ronaldo doesn't seem like one of those players that's going to come over to MLS. Like, I just think he wants to go out in one of the big leagues. I don't see him doing the retirement tour in MLS at any stage. Maybe I've got that totally wrong. I just think, I mean, his ego has served him incredibly well. I mean, it's what made him who he is. I mean, he always strived to be the best. I don't think he wants that last chapter to be at an MLS club. Or I know he had the offer. What was it? The Saudi League over the summer. Like, I don't think he wants to take that step. I think he'd ideally like to finish in England or Spain or Italy or one of those, one of the big leagues and finish off on top. I don't think he would take that route. So I think you're right. I think that probably in his camp, they're saying, okay, what are our options? And he's not seeing any of the options that he wants, which is, a Champions League club. And he's like, oh, maybe I need to make amends and try to stick around because this, I don't want to, I don't like any of the offers that are on the table right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Larry? Because obviously the contract is, I think the options on United's side this summer, and you can't imagine it, if United go back to the table and if they do offer a new deal. I mean, first of all, I guess if they extend the contract, then it's going to be on the current terms, which is everything that Ronaldo's going to want, and everything that United probably don't at this moment in time, And if he goes elsewhere, the whatever 500 grand, 400 grand that he's on is going to be 200 grand at a club who will be pushing the top dollar to get him. You know what I mean? Like, let's argue for the sake of putting the point out there that Napoli wanted him. You know what I mean? They might say, all right, we'll put this chunk of a wage budget to him, just, give him 200 grand, leverage it against something else, give him a percentage of all this just to get him in for a short period of time. But he's really having to work. He's going to have to drop those kind of expectations to that kind of level if he wants a decent move after United.
Well, I think that's the weird thing is there was all this talk in the summer about he wants to play in the Champions League. He wants to play in the Champions League. He wants to be in the Champions League, right? Like that was the party line all summer. Even if it didn't come directly from him, it came from people that he was, his camp was feeding the information to. Ronaldo has more money than any of us could even dream of. Like, if it was that big of a deal to go for the record, to go for the, to go, have the Champions League record for goals, to be in the Champions League because that's where he thinks he belongs, why not take that $200,000 offer somewhere? Like, well, if he didn't feel like there was a good offer on the table, just take an offer from a Champions League club. That was what I didn't really understand. It's like, yeah, most clubs probably aren't going to pay you what United are paying you. In fact, I can't think of any that would pay you what United are paying you. But if you're so dead set as a competitor on being in the Champions League, take a lower offer. He doesn't need the money at this point. I'm sure it's nice, never turn down money, but for him, the difference between 500,000 and 200,000, I don't think is the end of the world. Like if your priority is the Champions League, then just take whatever offer is on the table.
Exactly. It's the value of the opportunity at this point. How much does he value that opportunity? Harry, the point here, Helen makes a good point. Napoli don't need him anymore, but this is the conundrum that he finds himself in. Sonny's made this great point here. Hi, guys. Back to Sporting would be the romantic option. Money's the problem. I feel we may have to pay a big chunk of his wages unless he's released. And I guess when he's had that conversation with Mendes, it's like, should we negotiate a termination of the contracts? They're like, well, let's not turn our back on that money just yet. That's the situation that they found themselves in, isn't it, Harry?
Exactly, and I think that's what prompted the very quick U-turn. I think it still goes to show that money goes a very long way in football. Yeah, ultimately, across, I think it's a hybrid here in what Ronaldo wants. He ultimately wants to get this record in Champions League goals, but he wants to get paid at the same time. So that's why the MLS isn't for him, and I think really he's still at that level mentally anyway, and to be fair, physically, where he wants to be at the peak, where he wants to be at a high level of football. And no disrespect to the MLS, I don't think that's what is where he wants to be. It won't get him out of bed in the morning, to play that kind of football. So it's a tricky one. I mean, I doubt at the end of the season, United are going to turn around with a contract for him, unless something drastic happens in the way he plays for us or his relationship with Ten Hag. I mean, something needs to change massively for him to stay. And I think for the money that we're paying him, there's not many European clubs out there that will pay that money. Again, that point about Napoli, I mean, that's a point about the clubs in general in the Champions League. How many teams in the Champions League, need Cristiano Ronaldo really at, 36, 37 years old, demanding even 200 grand a week for European clubs is massive. It's huge.
Yeah.
They don't have the big money like Premier League clubs have. So I think he's going to have a big kind of, issue at the end of the year as to where he actually goes. Hence this quick turn, like I said on his Twitter posts or Insta posts, that I think Mendes must have sat him down and said, look, it's been a while, but this club has done this before. Like you said about Roy Keane, if you push a little bit too hard, they have the ability of just turning around and saying, look, this isn't working out, we'll terminate your contract. So yeah, just calm down a little bit and see the season through. And that's why he's done what he's done and just relaxed a little bit. But yeah, like I said, don't think there's too many clubs out there for him.
I feel a little bit. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge Ronaldo fan, and I want to see him extend the record in which he's got. And I don't want to see Messi overtake him. And there's two records on it. There's a Champions League record, which he's not in complete control of because you can't, he can't dictate United's success in that as much as he'd like to on the pitch. But there's the other goal record, which Messi's, because he's having a great season at Paris, and now we might feel incentivized to go, do you know what, I'll have 2 or 3 more seasons playing alongside Mbappe, and well, depending on what happens with him, but Mbappe and Neymar, they'll still be able
on
to,
that.
but whoever Paris, even if they bring in someone to replace Mbappe, he's going to be one of the best creators in Europe. So Messi's going to have his pick of the goals in the French league. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's say if he gets 20 or 30 and Ronaldo's going to be, even if he's playing just club football and he wants that club football goal record extending, he's going to have to be there and be present in a team where he's scoring goals, no matter what league that is in, which is going to be an interesting one. I mean, Dave says here, Earthquakes offer $100,000 a week and a Popeyes loyalty card.
If he goes to the US, he'll end up in LA because that's the lifestyle that he's going to want. But
yeah, maybe not Phil Neville's.
I was going to say maybe Miami, but I mean, I don't know. I honestly, even though I'm American, I don't follow MLS very closely. I don't think they're doing very well. So
can you imagine Ronaldo being managed by Phil Neville?
It would be so funny. It would bring Beckham and Ronaldo together, which would be a kind of an interesting storyline. But Phil Neville being his manager would be awesome.
Yeah. Romeo Beckham providing the crosses for him.
Yeah.
We will see. So that's it for this week, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with Paul Parker to talk about the Chelsea game, get his thoughts on it, and also preview the game against Sheriff in the coming days after that, which is the Europa League game on Thursday. I think time just run out to preview that one tonight, but I'll talk about it with Paul tomorrow. If you've enjoyed the pod, please like and subscribe on YouTube. Really appreciate that. And leave comments if you're watching the replay. If you've listened back on the audio podcast, please be sure to like and give us a review and subscription on the platform you're listening on. Until next week, guys, stay well, safe, and thanks for listening and watching.